Hey everybody, and welcome back to the internet. So, I hope you're having a good day. I've got a pretty big announcement coming tomorrow, so remember to watch tomorrow's video. But in the meantime, we're going to start off with a story from Imagine the Internet called, I'm a Bad Friend for Leaving When My Friend Kicked Me Out of Her House. So this story is about a friend I had in high school. I called her Kelly in one of my past stories, but in this story I'll call her EB for Entitled Baboon. So EB isn't the most stable person, and would lash out at people at the drop of a hat. She wasn't like that when we were younger, but once puberty hit, the she-devil in her was released. Most people have given up on arguing with her and just let EB have her way. All but her sister and me. Now I'm socially awkward, blunt, and after a few years of her crap, I just stopped caring. One minute she would act like we are BFFs and she couldn't live without me, and then the next she thought I was a B-word and wouldn't talk to me. This is probably the best example of what our friendship was like. On to the story. So one day, after not hearing from EB for a couple days, she called me saying how she missed me and wanted to hang out. I was happy to hear from my friend and head to her house. When I get there, her boyfriend was there. Me and him got along. I've defended him from her verbal abuse and told him that she was planning something stupid multiple times. So we were kind of friends, but I still wasn't expecting him to be there. I say, hi guys, not to be rude, but why is your boyfriend here? I thought we were hanging. She says, we are, but it's a date night, so you're going to hang with us. You could tell by the pushover boyfriend's face, he didn't know about any of this. I just shrugged. It was not uncommon for EB to drag me along on her dates when we were in middle and high school. Whoever she was dating at the time, I never understood why she did it, but she would get mad if we said anything about it. So without another word, we started a movie in the living room with her hippie dad. 30 minutes into the movie, this conversation happened. So EB says, hey, stay here. Me and my boyfriend are going to my room. We'll be back in about 40 minutes. I rolled my eyes at her smirk and waved her off. It was also very common for her to ditch me for personal time with her boyfriend at the time. Even the dad didn't say anything, he was used to it. He used to reprimand her for stuff like this, but with how she would lash out, he decided to pick his battle, and this was not one worth fighting. So we continued the movie as EB and her boyfriend disappeared down the hall. No more than 5 minutes later, we hear EB yelling at her boyfriend. I ran down the hall to find both of them still dressed, thankfully, and her boyfriend hanging up his phone. She's saying, you can't leave! He says, that was my mom, she needs me to come into work. One of the bussers called in sick, and it's Saturday, she needs me. So the boyfriend worked at a karaoke bar his mom was the manager at. So EB says, can't she call Jimmy? Says, he's out of town. I'm the only one she could call in. But it's date night. Hey, Kay's here. You guys can have a girls' night or something. We can have a date night tomorrow. She says, no, you don't love me. I bet you're cheating on me. His jaw dropped. When he's not at work or school, he is with her. He literally had no time to cheat on her. He says, I bet you aren't going to work. I bet you're going to see any girl. I interrupted her. EB, that's enough. Push over, go get your shoes on, and go to work. He walked out of the room to get his shoes in the living room. I said, EB, calm down. You're being unreasonable. He's not cheating. He's always with you. He needs to go to work. EB glares at me and follows him, still yelling. Another 5 minutes back and forth. You can't leave. I got work. You don't love me. Finally, it got to the point she's sitting on the floor crying with me, her boyfriend, and her dad kneeling next to her. She says, just leave. You don't love me anymore. He says, that's not true, and I'm not leaving like this. Please calm down. The dad says, please calm down. It's all okay. She was just playing them. She thought if she acted like this, he would stay. Just leave me alone. I want to go to my room. We didn't let her and told her to calm down, that we cared about her. When EB is upset and left alone, she throws things and yells about us leaving her, yelling at us that we left her alone like she demanded, so we don't love her. She does this every time. If we don't leave her alone, then she says the same thing. We don't love her since we won't give her space and leave her alone. There was no winning. She says, none of you love me. You won't let me go to my room. I want to be left alone. I say, if we let you go to your room, you'll just get even madder. You'd be upset with us for leaving you alone. She glares at me. Shut up. None of you love me. No one loves me. You all hate. Slap. I was pissed and had blacked out for a second. 1 minute I'm watching her yell. The next my hand is in the air and she's looking to the side with a red mark on her cheek. I have no memory of slapping her. I have never slapped anyone before or since. We were all shocked. So both her boyfriend and dad clapped and mouthed thank you to me. And then she lost it. She says, how dare you? I looked at my hand and then her, and then the other two were trying not to grin. She says, how could you let her hit me? I'm your daughter and your girlfriend. Defend me. Don't you love me? She just hit me. She was now yelling at both of them. I said, you were acting crazy. She says, get out. Call your boyfriend to pick you up. You'd rather be with him anyway. I say, calm down. She says, no, get out of my house. I say, fine. Hey, go to work. You're running late. I texted my boyfriend and EB is glaring at me from the couch. He says, will you be okay? I say, I'm fine. Go. He left, and a few minutes of silence later, my boyfriend picked me up, and I told him everything. Then I told my mom. We all agreed that the whole thing was pure madness. The next day, she calls me at 8 a.m. It's Sunday, and I'm not a morning person. On weekends, I sleep until at least 10 a.m. I say, what? She says, how could you leave yesterday? I said, what? She says, you left me alone when I needed you. What kind of friend does that? I was like, you told me to leave. She says, but I was emotional and needed my best friend. I said, you kicked me out. I'm not going to stay when someone tells me to leave. She says, but you were my best friend. You should have been there for me. I was like, you kicked me out. She says, whatever, I forgive you. I said, what? I forgive you for abandoning me when I needed you. I said, you told me to get out of your house. She says, anyway, let's hang out. How about the mall? I was silent. I needed a minute to process this whole thing. I couldn't believe this phone call. None of it made sense. How was I a bad friend for leaving when I was kicked out? She says, and I got to tell you about... Click. I hung up. She called back. I didn't answer. I said, nope, I'm not awake enough for this. I grumbled into my pillow. I turned off my phone and slept for another 2 hours. She acted like nothing happened the next time I saw her. Sadly, this didn't end our friendship. It took another year before I got sick of her crap and ended our friendship. Man, the levels of drama with teenage girls knows no bounds. Yeah, whenever I run into people like this, I'm just like, no, I'm not going to deal with this. You have fun. I'm going to leave now. And now the next one, from Tales from the Front Desk, called, When Night Audit Calls You at Home at 3 a.m., It's Never Good. So I used to be a property manager at a major hotel chain in the US. The GM was a company rock star who spent a lot of time helping other properties, so I was acting GM a lot, like I was that night. This was a 96-room property, 4 building blocks layout, with a swimming pool in the center. We had a lot of construction contracts, easy guests who'd worked all day, came back, played cards and drank some beer, and then turned in early. Little bit of a hooker problem, but that's another story. So I'm at home and my phone rings at 3 a.m. Josh, the night auditor. Josh is reliable, but he also smokes his body weight in weed every week. He says, hey man, you probably want to come down here. Someone just drove a truck into the swimming pool. I say, that's impossible. It's fenced in. He says, dude, they crashed through it. I say, how could a truck even get in the courtyard? He says, they drove through the gap between the 2 buildings. So me visualizing, building 2 is on a hill above 1 and 3. There's a gap there, so someone determined could point a truck downhill, gun it, and get enough momentum to crash the chain link and go into the pool. So yeah, possible. I say, Josh, you had better not be messing with me. Spoiler alert, Josh was not messing with me. I get to the motel, and there's a construction company pickup truck, nose down in the swimming pool, tailgate in the air. I have to blow up the phones at corporate, get the cops out, start documenting everything, photographing everything, deal with the other guests, etc., until way past dawn. Turns out 2 of the crew had gotten drunk and decided to quit in the most spectacular way they could think of. We even had an eyewitness. She told the cops that one guy drove and the other guy rode standing up in the flatbed, holding on to the top of the cab, and yee-hawing all the way down the hill and into the pool. Construction company did the repairs themselves. Man, there's no pictures for this story? Well, my disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined. I hope at least some of you get this reference, by the way. Next we've got, I really don't know what to call this. So one day I'm working the register when a man and woman couple who were in their very early 20s, if that, bring a book up to my register to check out. Actually, it was the woman who was carrying the book and handed it to me. And I promise you, before she handed me the book, I noticed that she looked rather agitated. She looks at me, and then looks at her boyfriend with irritation, then hands me the book. At the same time, the boy had a look of shame and embarrassment on his face as he looked down at the floor. What book were they purchasing, you might ask? I bet some of you have already figured it out. It was called Sex for Dummies. Now I have to say that I am so glad that I no longer work in retail, but that was one of my more pleasant memories of working in customer service. Hey, I mean, we've all got to start somewhere, you know? I wonder how they figured it out before books were a thing. Man, we're just blasting through these. Now we've got random entitled mom detains me because I'm not from China. So one day when I traveled into inner Beijing, when my dad asked me to grab us some snapper from the market for dinner. When I got there, it was busy, as usual, and being practically the only non-Asian person there, I copped a lot of stares. It doesn't faze me anymore, but back then I hated the stares, but got over it. I found some really nice snapper and purchased it for a nice price. As I was leaving, this woman ran up to me. She wasn't Asian and had a hard American accent. She says, "Excuse me, but aren't you meant to be somewhere else?" I was like, no. She says, "You're not from here." I said, "Your point? Judging from your accent, you're not from here either." She says, "Well, duh. Look, missy, I'm gonna have to get a police officer since you shouldn't be here." I was like, "Go ahead, they'll see I'm on a working visa and let me go." She says, "Just you wait." So we waited for a few minutes, and funny enough, there were officers around us. She just hadn't noticed. I tell her I'm late and need to get home, to which she grabs me by the arm and puts me to the ground. knee over my face, and it hurt a lot. I started yelling for help, and she starts going on about how I'm being detained. What the F? A few of those officers came over and pulled her off of me and helped me up. This dummy kept trying to tell them in English that I'm an immigrant and need to be deported. My Mandarin isn't the best, but I explained to the officers that she assaulted me for no reason. They let me go, and the last I saw her, she had roughly 7 officers huddled around her. When I told my dad what happened, he just laughed. That snapper was amazing. The lady should have just gone up and been like, China ain't big enough for the 2 of us white people. Man, why do I say such dumb things on this channel? Alright, now we've got one big final story called My Hag of a Stepmom Gave Away My PlayStation 4 While I Was Away in College, so I rent out her house while she was on her honeymoon with her newest husband. Alright, everybody still here? We just made it through the title. So I'm an only son. So my mom died of ovarian cancer at only 55, 5 years ago. It broke my dad's heart. They had been together since college and were the same age, with my dad being a month older. I'm 22 and about to graduate college with my degree in chemistry when the main events start to occur. I went to college on a full-ride scholarship. This is important later. So my dad met my now stepmom when she was my mom's nurse at the hospital, where she spent her final days. My stepmom, Grace, played all the right notes to gain my dad's trust. She was empathetic to him, nurturing, comforting after my mom passed. So I was 17 and old enough to sense that she was just trying to weasel her way into getting my dad's resources. But it was up to my dad if he wanted to be in a relationship with her. I was in my final year of public school and had just won a scholarship to attend a college out of the country for the following year. My dad mourned my mom for a year, and that whole time Grace would check in on him by phone every month or so, in my opinion, to scope out the possibility of sinking her hooks in him. After a year passed, Grace took the gloves off and went hard after my dad. Grace was only 40 when she and my dad started seeing each other. I didn't like her, but at the same time, my dad at least didn't seem so depressed anymore, so I tried to be less pessimistic about her and give her the benefit of the doubt. In my gut, I didn't trust her though. But we are Scandinavian, and at least in my family, the son does not tell his father what to do, or even offer any opinion. Grace is from the Czech Republic, if you're wondering. My father is a very successful banker during his career, and amassed quite a portfolio of wealth. I'll spare you the details, but after 6 months of dating, Grace and my father are married. So my dad never really got over my mom though, and he was getting weaker and weaker, even though he was only 57. Since his health was fading, he called me to him and asked me point blank, "Boy, what do you need to set you up in this life?" I told him I don't need anything. I'm a man and can take care of myself. But what are you even talking about, Dad? You're going to be around for decades yet. I did remind him that he had living sisters with children, my aunts and cousins. I also reminded him that I have a full scholarship to a college, so don't worry about giving me any cash. He was dead only a year later at 59. I, of course, have seen lots of Hollywood movies, so I consider the conspiracy theory that maybe my dad's nurse wife poisoned him and made him sign over all of his money to her. But I really honestly do not think that's what happened. Other relatives didn't like Grace either, but they knew my dad was totally in love with my mom, and that her death utterly broke him. Well, long story short, my dad bequeathed his 5-bedroom house to me, even though I wasn't expecting it. He gave a small endowment to each of his sisters and their children. He left about 80% of his existing money to Grace, which amounted to several hundreds of thousands of dollars. My dad ignored me because he's generous to a fault and still gives me several tens of thousands of dollars, which were of course very useful to me. Grace tried to put on a friendly front, but I could tell she was really angry that she didn't get my dad's house too. That belonged to me, and I had the legal papers to prove it. She was especially mad because we lived in an extremely upscale and trendy location, and houses are hard to come by and easily sold for massive profit. During the first few months after my dad's death, I had the nauseating, creepy experience of knowing that Grace was trying to feel me out to see if I might be into a little relationship with her. Gross. She still stayed at the house though, because over the last 3 years she had gotten used to living there and acting like she owned it. And even though I officially owned it, I was away at college and only visited my dad's old house once every couple months. And even then, it wasn't to see Grace, but to see my cousins who lived just a few miles away. I downplayed the fact that it was really my home, and over the months, I think Grace gradually forgot that she really had no legal right to the house. She probably believed that sooner or later, because I never asked her for any of the hundreds of thousands of my dad's dollars that she now had, that I was somehow independently wealthy and would just give up my house to her. I knew I'd eventually hydrobomb this lady when she started dating some new guy only 5 months after my dad was in the ground. And one time when I came home from college after graduating, she and her new boyfriend, some sleazy looking D-bag named Ivan, who was only a few years older than me, were acting like I was a guest in my own house, and that they owned it. I played along. Grace told me that she gave away my PlayStation 4 to Ivan's cousin because I'm too old to play with video games. I don't even know this dude, and you give him my PS4 to give away to some other turd who I also don't know? I quickly changed all my network passwords that same day. I smiled, but I knew what I had to do eventually. She also said that she and Ivan were getting married because I just can't mourn your father forever. I have to move on with life. I tell her that I graduated college and already secured employment with a local firm, and will soon find a new place to live. She looks thrilled, especially the part where it looks like I'll soon have a new place to live. Then in a patronizing way, she tells me, "You always have a place in our house, though. You're always welcome to stay whenever you please." Thanks, Grace. Really generous of you. What I really say is that I will probably have a new place in 3 months. She says that is wonderful because she intends to go to her homeland to have a wedding with Ivan, and afterward have her honeymoon. She assures me that it's a local affair. Otherwise, I'd invite you, honey. And anyway, I know you're so busy. I congratulate her. She asked me if I can watch the house for her. Watch my own house? Sure. What I really say is, of course I will take care of the house. I'm careful to not say, your house. She and her D-bag fiancé, who I am 100% sure is only there for Grace's money, go on their trip, and I immediately put out advertisements in the rental websites offering to lease my house. I hire movers and have all of Grace's furniture and possessions boxed up and put into the storage rental facility. I retain all of my parents' furniture that they had before my dad met Grace. Locks? Changed. All of them. Within days, I'm inundated with dozens of inquiries regarding my amazing, furnished house with fantastic views. I rent it to a wonderful young family, a barrister and his schoolteacher wife and their 2 preteen children. They pay me first and last month's rent, and sign a lease for a year. I warn them about my crazy stepmom who thinks this is her house, but I present them with contact information to my lawyer, the same lawyer my dad retained, in case they need any assurance that I'm on the level. I also give my lawyer the information about the storage facility, including the fact that I generously paid 4 months of storage in advance, which is a whole month longer than Grace's Czech honeymoon adventure. I then found a great apartment in the city near my place of work. There I met a woman in a restaurant I frequent at night after a long workday. We've been dating for 6 months now and are engaged to be married. Grace, of course, tried to shriek and cause trouble when she realized she got kicked out of my house, but my lawyer quickly shut her mouth without my having ever to speak to her garbage face again. From what I hear, her and her trash husband left the country, and I assume they are blowing through my dad's money, and will soon be broke like Shavs usually become when they taste a little bit of what they think is the good life. So maybe Grace will go and try to exploit some other lonely man to give her his money. Speaking of money, the house that I rent out is generating so much money that I am not only able to help pay for my cousin's college, but I moved into a larger apartment on my own, together with my fiancé. I love my job, but really, I could survive solely on renting my dad's old house. And to think, if Grace had only been cooler and nicer, I might have let her stay at that house, just to be a good sport. And definitely if she stayed the heck out of my room. But no, she had to go act all proprietary, so I had to make her homeless as a wedding gift. P.S. I bought another PS4 even though I didn't even use my old one that much. It didn't matter. It wasn't for Grace to give away. You don't give away other people's things. You give away your own things. Which is why I have chosen to kick Grace out of my house, because it's mine, and I decide who stays there. Well, that was a pretty fun story. Although I don't know why the storyteller didn't just decide to live in the house and get married and stay there afterwards. But I guess sometimes you don't need a massive house for just 2 people. And then you'd also have to deal with that crazy lady coming over all the time. Anyway, let's move on to the question of the day, which is, what is the scariest, oh heck no, experience you've had? So when I was 10 or so, I woke up before everyone in the house, it was like 7 a.m., and decided I would go sneak into the pool. I was waist deep in the water before I saw the alligator on the other side of the pool. Today on Florida Man News. So I've posted this before somewhere, but I used to work the night shift all the time, and basically shifted my whole sleep schedule over to that. Wake up at 7 p.m. every day. It was fine, save for the fact that every now and then I'd have to do my grocery shopping at like 10 p.m., which wouldn't be so bad if I also didn't have epilepsy, which means I can't legally drive, so I bike everywhere, usually listening to podcasts on the way. So one day I was on my way home from shopping and got to my driveway. It was one of those super long rural driveways that so many creepypasta people will go into a long 4-page long description of how creepy it is. It wasn't creepy, really, just secluded. Anyway, it's a long drive through the woods, and I'm used to all kinds of animals jumping out and running by as I'm going down the road. But this day, something felt off. I saw an animal jump out in the middle of the drive, and I just stopped, waiting for it to scurry off. I honestly thought it was a deer, because they're stupid and everywhere. But then my lights caught the eye shine, and I realized it was way too low to be a deer. My next thought was, oh great, it's one of those coyotes that we keep seeing in the backyard. I unplugged my headphones and turned my music up as loud as it'll go. I had a Lumina 635, which had a really loud speaker. I started stomping my feet and tried to scare the dumb coyote out. I was shining my light out on it. It just stood there, staring at me. And then it got low to the ground. Low to the ground and sulked towards me. I realized immediately this was not a deer or a coyote or even a neighborhood dog escaped. It was a freaking mountain lion that was now slowly approaching me. I backed my way out down the driveway, making sure not to lose eye contact with the animal, and then busted my butt down the hill to my job. which was the only place open at that hour within immediate biking distance. I wasn't 100% certain it was a mountain lion at seeing it skulk. I just knew it was not any of the animals I'm used to seeing. It was acting aggressive/defensive towards me being there. The only reason I know it was a mountain lion was as I turned the corner at the top of the hill, I tilted my head to make sure nothing was following me, to see another, maybe the same one, sitting on a rock and was literally 4 feet away from me. It normally takes me 30 minutes to get to work. It only took me 10 minutes that day. You know, it's always fun to play with little kitties, but when they become big kitties, then you usually want to avoid those. So there was one time back when I was in 8th grade, I was like 14 or something. I was walking to school one morning, and halfway to school, this old guy's like, "Hey, you better watch out, there's a mountain lion loose somewhere around here." And I'm just like, oh, okay. So I walked the rest of the way to school, and the whole school was on lockdown for like at least the first half of the day, because, you know, there's like, oh, there's a mountain lion loose in the neighborhood or something. And then later that day when I got home, I heard from my neighbor, like my neighbor across the street, looked out their window and saw the mountain lion like outside of their basement window, and they took a picture. And judging by like the time that they took the picture, I was like, I think I might have walked right past that on my way to school and didn't even notice. So yeah, that was fun. Early one morning I was leaving a hotel and a man followed me to my car. I jumped in quickly and locked the doors as my butt was hitting the seat. He knocked on my window and I let it down only about 2 inches. He tried his best to convince me I dropped a key in the parking lot and should get out and get it. It was a ploy and I knew it. I finally looked him in the eye and said, "No, not me." He knew I meant that he wasn't getting me. I wasn't scared, but instead furious. I left before he did and hurried to get onto the interstate. With heavy 5-lane traffic, he came flying up behind me, and then right before slamming into me, he darted left between cars, almost causing an accident. I couldn't report him because I left so quickly and didn't get his plate number. I never stayed at that hotel again while traveling that route. So you never know who you can trust at night. So I was traveling around Rajasthan with my family. Parents, aunt and uncle, cousins, grandparents, when I was 11 years old. We were having lunch at our hotel, and I got into a fight with my aunt and stormed out of the hotel. The hotel had a small park/children's play area by the entrance, with swings and a slide and whatnot. I ran outside and went to play on the swings. It being a small hotel and lunchtime, the play area was totally empty, as most of the other kids at the hotel were with their families. I sat on the swings and stewed for a little while, before a man, probably in his 30s, approached the play area and sat down to the swing beside me. Being a naive 11-year-old who was missing her friends back home, and who had no one else to talk about my fight, when this guy started asking me questions about my family, I opened up and answered them in detail. He asked if I was hungry, seeing as I had missed lunch. I told him I was, and he said he had food in his private cottage. The cottages were behind the hotel and were quite fancy, much fancier than our standard issued hotel rooms, and asked if I wanted to come eat lunch with him in the cottage. I was really curious to see what those cottages looked like from the inside, and I was this close to saying, sure, when my mom came looking for me and the guy bolted. My back was to the entrance of the hotel, but my guess is he must have seen my mom approaching the play area and booked it before she got a glimpse of him. My mom sat next to me, where he'd been sitting, and asked me who the man was. I told him he was my new friend. Oh man, 11-year-old me was so dumb. And that he invited me to lunch in his posh cottage. Mom gave me a lecture on stranger danger, led me back inside the hotel, and filed a complaint at reception of the creepy man hanging around the kids' play area. I was heavily supervised for the rest of our trip, and it wasn't until a couple years later that I realized that the guy probably saw a kid sitting alone in the park and figured it'd be an easy target. Well, it looks like that's all of the stories we've got for today. I'm gonna finish out with a cat video like usual, but don't forget I've got an announcement tomorrow, so be sure to watch tomorrow's video. And I will talk to you guys next time.